Hello, can everyone hear me? Just chat in the chat box, or you can give me a thumbs up. Yeah, Megan, all right. Thank you, Courtney, Savannah, awesome. Hi, everyone, welcome. My name is Akila Thomas. I'm the manager of community engagement for PBS's documentary film series, POV. We are truly, truly, truly grateful to see our community come out together today for this moment of learning and conversation around our free POV films and educational resources. We had about 118 register for this event, which is pretty incredible for our first webinar as a team. And with everything happening right now across the globe, we're really practicing patience and wanting people to just ease into this conversation, come in and out as you feel free, and I'm sure people will start trickling in soon. We know our home, that is New York City, where our parent organization, American Documentary, is located, is feeling the weight of it all, but we also acknowledge you all, and you all are in our hearts and our minds right now as we're all navigating this incredible shift and impact that this virus is having on our collective public health. So some of you have already chatted in the chat box, and we understand that some of you may be joining us as formal educators in private, public school and or homeschooling spaces. And some of you just might be family members, friends who are looking for educational resources to support distance learning in your community for your children right now, given that schools are closed nationwide. And we want to just honor everyone who's working around the clock right now to support care and education for our young people, and also including our adult communities as well during this time of crisis. So just some context on why we're here, right? So this Documentaries for Distance Learning webinar was designed in partnership with our incredible POV Engage team and our talented filmmakers of the Rescue List. We really want to exchange information and conversation and how we've been shifting towards remote learning and virtual programming right now to support our classroom spaces. And this incredible film, The Rescue List, did have its national broadcast debut on our PBS documentary film series, POV. It happened on March 23rd, and we really hope you all had a chance to watch it either on your local PBS stations or online before joining us today. And if you didn't get a chance to watch, we'll be showing a trailer much later about the film, but just a little snippet about the film. It takes place in the beautiful Volta region of Ghana. I actually traveled there and spent some time there about 10 years ago when I was a graduate student in social work, and the film really truly took me back and had me reflect a lot on what is our collective responsibility to ending slavery. How are we utilizing this power of friendship, community, and support, and education to really help our young people navigate through situations, traumatic situations at that. So I'm hoping that this conversation is very useful for you all in supporting some of your needs. Please, again, come and go as you want within this next hour of learning. We will be recording this webinar to share with you through email as a resource for future reference. And we want to encourage you to utilize the chat box, please. Spark conversation, engage with each other. We'll be prompting with some starter questions and prompts throughout the evening. So just take some time right now to please chat and tell us where you're joining us from in the world, if you haven't already, and what communities you're serving. And what do you hope to gain from today's conversation around POV educational resources for distance learning? Next slide, please. So I definitely want to take a moment just to shout out our team, POV Engage team. We are made up of artists, educators, social workers, students who've been listening in and prioritizing and shifting, definitely supporting the mutual aid for our inspiring filmmakers, and our community members in our POV family. So, POV's been around since 1988. We've partnered with 650 plus community storytellers, documentary films storytellers, across the globe, around their community outreach strategies, as well as educational strategies for their PBS POV films. We also partner with 12,000 plus community members like you, who are wanting to engage with our free POV social issue documentaries to spark conversation on air, online, and in person, hopefully very soon, now virtually, to just deepen conversations on how we can educate, but how we can also mobilize around civic action. And also the PBS POV documentary series, if you are unfamiliar. It is the longest running showcase on TV for independent films, and it airs Monday nights between June through October with some pop-out films. So please do check your local PBS listings, as we'll be announcing our lineup for season 33 very, very soon this month. And last note before I hand it off, we also have a POV Community Network website where community members historically have been checking out and loaning out DVDs of our POV feature-length films and our short films to host in-person conversations and screenings. But we want to definitely do our part to stop the spread of this virus. So we've suspended the DVD lending library for now, but we are encouraging our community partners to please view POV films streaming online. We'll drop a link in the chat box. And you can also look to that website to be added to the newsletter to stay up to date on our events. But now I want to pass it along to our Manager of Education, Courtney Cook, who's going to just talk about our agenda. Hey, Courtney, and also introduce our wonderful panelists. Enjoy tonight.
Thank you, Akila. Can everyone hear me? Yes, yes, yes. I hope so. I'm going to keep talking. Okay, thanks, Megan. This is so interesting and wonderful. Thank you for joining us tonight for our very first virtual engagement since everything changed. We're really grateful for all of you for taking the time to be here and engage in this conversation and grow together. I wish I could see all of you on the other side of the screen. I've really enjoyed reading who you are and where you're visiting us from. And I'm going to take a quick minute to offer some brief introductions to our panelists tonight. We're also very grateful for our panelists. And then I am going to do a quick run of show, give an overview of what the agenda will be tonight so you can have a sense of how things are going to go. First, tonight we're going to hear from Gina Blume. Gina has been a POV partner for more than 11 years and has hosted more than 200 community events, which officially makes her a professional at using POV documentaries and resources in her community. She's a public relations coordinator from the Monroe Township Public Library and is a mother also who's navigating these questions of being a teacher and working from home and navigating all the new challenges that many of you are also navigating. After Gina wraps up, we're going to hear from filmmakers Alyssa, Fedele, and Zachary Fink, who will discuss their incredible documentary, The Rescue List, which you can stream for free through the end of the month at amdoc.org. They will touch on their approach to filmmaking and the role education plays in their film. Remember that as we're listening to panelists, you can share any questions you have in the chat box. If you have questions directly for the panelists, hang tight. At the end of the webinar, we're going to have a Q&A, and we will get to as many questions as we can that you have to offer. Just address which panelist you would like to answer the questions in the chat box, okay? Our chat moderators will engage with you. They'll also be collecting questions for me to offer during the Q&A at the end of the webinar. We are hoping for a smooth virtual ride tonight, but if we do have technical difficulties, please hang in there with us and we'll figure it out. After Alyssa and Zach share a bit about the rescue list, I'm going to offer some information about our free educational resources that we provide for all of our documentaries at POV. And as I share information, as we all share information, please keep an eye on the chat box for relevant links. Okay, I think that's it. So we're going to get started. Gina will be up first. Gina, can you hear me?
Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay,
Great.
we're looking forward to hearing from you, Gina. If you can share some of your experiences with us. I am going to go ahead and mute myself. So take it away, Gina.
Thank you, Courtney and Akila. I was asked to share 2 insights with all of you: the importance of documentary film for community programs, and secondly, how I have adapted to the virtual platform with our audience. Before I do so, I'd like to share some background. Our library is located in a community of about 60,000 people in central New Jersey. We are at about 40,000 people a few years ago, so we are rapidly growing with folks moving in from northern New Jersey and New York. We are about 20 minutes from Rutgers University and Princeton. Our community is unique since half of our population live in active adult communities and the other half are young families. Our town has been particularly hard hit by the pandemic because of its proximity to New York City and its impact on older people. On March 14th, our library was one of the first to close. My position in public relations is developing adult programs in the library and outreach in the adult communities and nursing homes. My audience is 55 plus, so programs focus on current events, history, healthcare, and documentary film. Documentary film is an excellent low-cost program tool. Logistically, it's easy to present, especially when you're not in your own venue. I regularly take programs out into our community in a range of locations using on-site AV or my own projector and laptop. No matter the audience age, film provides a powerful visual tool to widen knowledge on complicated subject material. For example, regarding the ongoing situation in Syria, I use a series of POV films addressing several facets of the subject to connect my audience with events going on 6,000 miles away from us. For older audiences, especially those in their 80s through 100s, whom I see multiple times a month, in progressive care, no matter the topic, film programs keep them connected to the community that they are presently isolated from, and I also use film to engage them in current events. Film is a fantastic tool for community partnerships. I find this to be extremely valuable, in our community and getting in touch with individual clubs and organizations in the individual active adult communities. Most recently, I presented Dark Money at the League of Women Voters. This was a new partnership for us, and at the same time, tackled a difficult topic. No matter political ideology, this program bridged the divide over a common cause. In this case, it was campaign finance. POV film is an ideal component in a hybrid program with a guest speaker. For our library's 30th anniversary in 2019, I presented a series of programs on the global events back in 1989. This included the Exxon Valdez spill. Prior to the Valdez program, I screened the POV film Big Men to provide background about oil exploration and associated issues of exploitation and corruption. I invited an industrial hygienist from ExxonMobil, who headed up the Valdez cleanup, to expand on the issues specific to Alaska, from when the pipeline was constructed in the 70s to settlement of the case in the 1990s. POV films are useful to integrate it also into community celebration. This past November, along with several veterans clubs, we hosted a series with the POV films The Way We Get By, Where Soldiers Come From, and the premiere of my son's Eagle Scout project, the documentary Veterans Voices. These programs celebrated our veterans and promoted community service. No matter your audience, research is required to know what resonates. That being said, I also like to push the envelope with my older audience. We had quite a discussion over the culture of sexual assault presented in Roll, Red, Roll, and most recently, the topic of sex trafficking and blowing up. So regarding my transition to a virtual platform, presently, adaptation is the name of the game, since this is the first crisis happening in real time on a global scale. In addition to, of course, all of us working from home with the entire family in the house at the same time. So I'm having to wear several hats throughout the day with my children and family. After developing a communication plan and working out logistics, I transitioned from hosting in-library and outreach programs to exclusively online using Zoom. Weekly, I present programs similar or the same in topic as traditional library programs on the same days and time. Fortunately, due to our long-standing partnership with POV, POV Film was an initial virtual program that I presented. Presently, due to the situation, I'm selecting films based on physical DVDs from previous and scheduled programs, streaming titles available through POV's website, and those through our library subscription to Canopy. Adapting to a different program platform comes, of course, with a host of challenges. Some were unexpected, but workable. The first hurdle was licensing. Our public performance license provider that most libraries use did not extend our rights outside of the building. So I'm having to research and contact the individual companies behind the programs I use. So 4 weeks in, I'm pretty much have that squared away for the programs I've scheduled. I've come across a host of communication issues specific to my audience demographic. Fortunately, I can rely on my past research, industry experts within my profession, and also some non-traditional methods. From past research, I know that 3 out of 4 patrons learn about library programs by physically coming to the library to pick up a paper calendar of events, a building that is now closed indefinitely. This is not the social media generation using Facebook and Instagram to communicate. I'm having to lean heavily on established contacts and other methods to spread the word about virtual programs throughout our community. Another major challenge I'm dealing with is specific to this population is technology. Many are not familiar with virtual platforms like Zoom or WebEx. I have offered individual IT assistance by phone and test meetings, and then asked the recipient to pay it forward to a friend. Regardless of in-person or virtual programs, I use the POV discussion guide and follow-up pieces in development of programs. I regularly use the discussion guide component from POV's website as a starting point for research and developing talking points for film background and question prompts. I combine this discussion guide information with news articles, geographic data, economic and demographic information to provide the audience with context prior to a film screening. I find that film follow-up is universal across all genres and ages. We all want to know what happens next. I use the follow-up resource through POV, and for older film titles, I research to do my best to find out where protagonists are today. This really makes the audience feel connected. Personal experience with a film subject or location makes a program more relatable also for the audience. For example, in Dark Money, corporate malfeasance in Montana and was related to the mining industry, I've been in Butte, site of the world's largest copper mine, and shared my experiences with the audience. During the discussion, I also encourage audience to share their experiences as the demographic that I work with is very well traveled. For the virtual platform, post-film discussions are currently a work in progress due to participant hardware limitations and technical skill. Again, this is specific to the audience demographic that I'm working with. Presently, I keep patrons engaged during the program with questions in the chat box so they can think about a response. I'm also doing a hybrid of giving attendees the option to turn on their microphones and also reading out chat box comments. Across the board, I've had to shorten the discussion length compared to in-person programs. Overall though, I am seeing increased week-over-week attendance as the word gets out and more folks are getting comfortable with this new platform and what seems like it'll be a new normal, at least for a while, here in the Northeast. I regularly get, questions and comments in my email, and I'm hearing back from patrons how appreciative they are for POV programs and to have this bright spot in their day to look forward to. Long term, I see virtual programs as an addition to expand library offerings. Again, especially for our community members who are older, they are not going to be jumping back in to these large community gatherings when things start to reopen. We are in a completely new landscape when it comes to programming in public venues. So with that, thank you, and feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have.
Gina, thank you so much. Attendees, I hope you do have some questions. Gina, I really love this language of adapting being the name of the game and virtual programming being a work in progress. I think that right now it's something that we are all navigating, which is why we're here. And documentaries really do have this powerful essence of making us feel connected, or at least cultivating a sense of community, even if we can't see each other or be with each other. So if you have any questions from what Gina shared, please put them in the chat box, and we will have our Q&A after Alyssa, Fedele, and Zachary Fink, the directors of the rescue list, take the virtual floor. Alyssa and Zach, are y'all all set?
We are joining you. Can you hear and see us, Courtney?
Sure can. I'm
Hi,
going to pass the baton to y'all.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Courtney. And thank you to everyone on the POV Engage team for organizing this workshop. And a special shout out to Alice Quinlan, our impact producer, who is working behind the scenes here with the POV Engage team as well. We're so grateful for the work that POV does, and we're honored to be part of the POV family with the rescue list. Let's see, we'd also love to give a big shout out to all the educators and librarians that are out there in recognition of the links that you go, not just to educate students in your community, but to connect with and care for them. Alyssa and I have done a lot of filming in schools over the course of our careers, and we are always amazed by the energy and the commitment and the passion that you all put into your work. And I think a lot of parents are realizing just how heroic educators really are during this COVID-19 pandemic, as everyone is sheltering at home and homeschooling as well. So thank you so much. Alyssa and I are zooming into this webinar from outside of San Francisco, and we know that there are people all around the country that are tuning in. We're really grateful for that. To get started here, we'd like to start with a trailer of our film, The Rescue List. It's about 2 minutes long, and we will kind of turn off our screen here and let you guys watch the trailer, and then pop back in to talk about it and the role that education plays as well. So Courtney, if you want to play the trailer.
Within the Adam, mini baby me free. And the papa na me di 7, and the papa be a band na me mammy the bank to a be, and the menya when or their mammy to me the papa nature. Yet the quite tinting. And the papa name Minister Vinel, you football to confuse me. And soon, my dear, you and Kessel, you. If it does, Papa will be a slave master.
Their mommy, who friend there? It is the one. So my family is open for my friends and Miss Munko. Cook for Banum Guide. Munko farm, Amuka family and Mumbra.
Person use it for the table. Ah, shut away, bro. Chamio is a Apollo. Where's family tonight? And I never fast more.
I feel like there's one particular child somewhere that I need to rescue. Until that child is rescued, I'll continue doing this work.
I know I'm going to wait until I end up.
All right, we're back.
Thanks, Courtney. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Courtney and Akila mentioned, our film is streaming on POV until April 21st, so please check it out if you haven't already. Zach and I are documentary filmmakers and anthropologists. Our film, The Rescue List, follows two children who are rescued from modern slavery to fishermen on Lake Volta in Ghana, West Africa. We followed these kids for a year while they lived at a rehabilitation shelter and attended school for the first time in their lives, received therapy from social workers, and prepared to reunite with their families. Along the way, one of these children, Peter, asked his rescuer to rescue his best friend, Tay, who was still enslaved to his former master on the lake. So we tracked that rescue mission too, and that story in particular revealed to us the ways in which these children endured enslavement on the lake through these incredible bonds of friendship that they nurtured in place of their families and in spite of the abuse and hardships that they endured. While these children were enslaved on the lake, they worked for fishermen, setting nets and hauling in tilapia on Lake Volta, which is the largest man-made lake on Earth. They were withheld from school, endured physical and psychological abuse, and were forced to work long days on the boats, doing hard labor with little food and no pay, while other children in the village attended school and lived a more typical childhood. As outsiders to this community, one of the things that drew us to this story is the fact that the rescue team is a grassroots organization founded by a Ghanaian survivor of trafficking and staffed by Ghanaians from the communities affected by trafficking. Their approach to rehabilitation is guided by their experiences as members of these communities and this culture. And that distinction compared to other outside aid organizations is one that we particularly wanted to shine a spotlight on. We chose to make the film by immersing ourselves in the community and filming observationally to honor and lift up the voices and experiences of the protagonists in our film.
Yeah, and throughout the filmmaking process, it was of utmost importance to us that the children's recoveries be primary. And because of that, that's one of the reasons that we made the film observationally. So instead of interviewing the children, we observed and we filmed, and we made their stories the center of the narrative. So when you watch the film, what you see are scenes unfolding much the way a narrative or scripted film unfolds. Conversations happen between the film's protagonists. In order to do that, we spent a lot of time in the field, up to a month at a time, and we made several trips over the course of a year. So we became very close with the children, the social workers, and the rescuers, and those relationships are what enabled us to be there to film the intimate scenes that make up our film. One of the things that has surprised us with this film is the response we've gotten from our younger viewers. It actually started with one of our team members' kids. When we were finishing the film, we were in the color correction phase, and our colorist occasionally had his children with him in the office after school. They were elementary and middle school age kids, and they were just captivated watching the shots that he was color correcting on screen, and they wanted to see the whole film. So one evening he took it home and he played the film for them, and they watched it start to finish. We were surprised, given the fact that it's a documentary and it's subtitled, and it's about trafficking and modern slavery, that these young children were captivated by the story. But we realized that centering the story on the children rather than the adults around them is what was drawing these young viewers and other younger viewers like them in. We were also careful in the making of the film not to include graphic descriptions of abuse out of respect for the children and their recoveries, so that sensitivity also makes the film appropriate for a younger audience. We say all of this because it got us thinking about engaging children with the film here in the US and abroad, especially in an educational setting. Children relate to the kids in this film, and they are curious to learn about modern slavery. This curiosity opens up an opportunity to address a critical misperception that slavery ended everywhere with abolition in the United States, and to teach students about modern slavery. So we were thrilled to develop a lesson plan with the brilliant POV Engage team that addresses modern slavery.
And this brings us to the theme of education that courses through our film. The founder of the rescue organization, James Kofi Annan, who actually isn't in the film but was our inspiration for making it, was trafficked into slavery on Lake Volta at the age of 6. He escaped as a teenager, and he had a really deep desire to get an education. So even though he was illiterate at the age of 13, he borrowed kindergartners' books and taught himself to read. He ended up excelling in school and attended college, but he felt a calling to help children in his community who were still experiencing trafficking and slavery. And he eventually founded the rescue organization, Challenging Heights, whose work is featured in our film. Zach actually met James at a fundraiser out in California years and years ago and heard his story, and that was what catapulted us into making the film. So drawing from James's personal experience, Challenging Heights believes that education is the key to preventing trafficking and slavery, because education can break the cycle of poverty. Research bears that out. A paper published by UNESCO shows that education is critical to escape chronic poverty and prevent the transmission of poverty between generations. Basic skills such as reading and writing have a documented positive effect on marginalized populations' incomes. 1 year of education is associated with a 10% increase in wages. Ultimately, it is poverty that drives trafficking and modern slavery, not just in Ghana, but around the world. In Ghana, traffickers target families experiencing extreme poverty. These are families who are living on less than $2 a day and who are struggling to meet their basic needs. Traffickers approach these families in times of desperate need, and they offer to take a child and care for them and teach them a trade. Many times, the parents didn't attend school themselves and may have worked when they were children. So sending their own child away to work doesn't seem unusual. What they often don't realize is that this isn't like working for their own parents. The way that the children are treated on the lake is much different. There's systemic abuse, hard labor, and malnutrition the children endure. And the parents don't necessarily understand that children won't be attending school or what the benefits of an education may be. By depriving these children of their right to an education, the cycle of poverty can repeat itself. And this is why Challenging Heights believes that education is the key to stopping modern slavery.
You know, we're often asked about something important that we had to cut out of our film. And I always think about the story of Peter. He's one of the young protagonists in the rescue list. He told the social workers during one of his meetings with them this story. He explained that he always wanted to go to school when he was working on the lake. It was his dream. You should understand that Peter spent 14 years enslaved on the lake from age 3 to 17. And in his story that he told the social workers, he said that twice when his master was away from the village for a few weeks, Peter enrolled himself in the village school. This one was when he was like 11 or 12, 13 years old. And both times when his master returned to the village, the master pulled Peter back out of school to go back to work. And the second time he did it, he threatened the teacher with violence if he were to ever allow Peter back in the classroom. So when Peter escaped, like James, our inspiration for making this film, he started kindergarten. He was 17 years old. And he really wanted to learn to read and write and speak English. And what's amazing now, he's probably like 18 or 19. It's like 3 years after starting school in Freedom. Peter is speaking English, and Alyssa and I can and do speak with him on the phone, which is a huge accomplishment in his education. We're super proud of him for achieving that. One of the things that we've done to ensure the 3 children who are now young men in our film have ongoing access to education is that we've started a scholarship fund to support the school fees for all 3 of these young men who are now in boarding school together close to their hometowns. We set up a GoFundMe site to help support that. So you can see that education is a theme that is woven all throughout our film. We hope that you'll tap into the POV library of films and amazing lesson plans and discussion guides to use with your students or your communities, both now during this COVID-19 pandemic when we're all sheltering in place, and in the future. It's an incredible resource. And of course, Alyssa and I also hope, if you haven't seen it yet, that you'll take the time to check out the rescue list. Thanks so much.
I'm back.
Hi again.
Thank y'all. Yes, I echo what Zach and Alyssa said. If you haven't had a chance to see this film, it's incredibly moving. It's powerful. And, you know, connecting something Gina shared with what Zach and Alyssa just shared is one thing that POV offers are behind the lens interviews with filmmakers. And then we often have updates from the protagonist and the people featured in the film. And so you have an actual connection with actual people who are living actual lives that this documentary, that I think the genre of documentary film makes possible. I'm a former high school English teacher and most recently a former university professor. And I know that what Gina was speaking to also was just kind of cultivating a sense of empathy, expanding our imagination beyond our own personal experiences, which I think right now could be some really good medicine for these isolating times. Thank you, Zach and Alyssa. Really briefly, I'm going to show some examples of the education materials. Here we are, really quickly, and then we'll do the Q&A. So then we'll go back to the other slide, Assad. Every one of our documentary films at POV, we have 30, we're about to have our 33rd season. There are many films. Comes with educational materials that you can make use of in your own classroom or kitchen or living room, whatever your classroom is these days. You'll see an example here of the Delve Deeper reading list. We have a library board, a national library board. I know some of our librarians are here tonight. Hi, librarians. Incredibly brilliant people putting a long list of resources together from all different genres, nonfiction, fiction, young adult literature, poetry, if you want to further engage with the topics and themes in the film or any of the historical background or context in the film. You can find our Delve Deeper reading lists on our website, amdoc.org, Engage. It will be in the chat box. I can't see the chat box right now. We also have discussion guides that are created and lesson plans that are created by experts in the field. And by experts, I mean classroom teachers. I mean people who have experiential knowledge of the work and people who have long been studying the themes that are taken up. Discussion guides can be used in all types of different community spaces and really provide an overview of thematic-based questioning. And so you'll see, if you can see on this slide, there are separate prompts. This is for the rescue list, these resources. So you'll see the discussion prompt of recovery, of reunification, of education and friendship. And you can choose, take what works for you and your community that you're working with, your students that you're working with, and leave the rest. The same with the lesson plan. The lesson plan really takes up one very specific issue and takes a more nuanced and focused deep dive. But for many of our films in the POV catalog, oh, that's very cool. We have this red dot that's showing you this is the lesson plan here. For many of our films in the catalog, there are these supplementary educational resources that you can make use of, and they are incredible. So I encourage you to find those in the chat box, find a link to those in the chat box. And now we're gonna move into our Q&A and see what y'all wanna know, audience members. I saw a handful of questions. Panelists, Can y'all join me on the screen? Or audio, if you would prefer.
We're back.
Hi. Gina, can you hear? Okay. So I saw one question. I'm just going to go here to the chat box. I saw one question from Michael. Did you already answer it? Oh, somebody? Wait. Okay, Michael.
We're scrolling up for it as well.
Michael says, Challenging Heights is leading the cause to battle slavery in Ghana, and the government struggles to support as well as condemn. I know a few years ago, the government was under scrutiny for not doing enough and potentially going to lose funding if from the U.S. if they could meet certain criteria set by the USA to battle slavery. Where is Ghana now? First question.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So there's the U.S. Department of State every year releases a what's called a TIP report, which is a trafficking in persons report. And this is where they assess trafficking in every country around the world, including our own. And they give them a rating, basically, to determine how well they're doing and what type of aid they can receive. Ghana has, for the past several years, been listed as a tier 2 on the watch list, which means that they do not fully comply with the US standards for preventing trafficking and slavery, but that they are making significant efforts to do so through organizations like Challenging Heights, as Michael noted. And in fact, in the 2019 TIP report, Ghana is highlighted for the work that organizations like Challenging Heights, for the work that they're doing, and it's pretty incredible. The downside of this is that what we saw and what Challenging Heights finds is that the Ghanaian government is unfortunately not doing as much as independent NGOs. And that also comes down to funding, unfortunately.
Thank you, Alyssa. And I have a question in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic. Do y'all have any updates in terms of where Ghana is and specifically in the Volta region, how the young men are being affected and how their communities are being affected right now?
Yeah, we have been checking in fairly regularly, most recently with Graaff, who was our associate producer and lives in Ghana in the community where most of these children are sourced from, although not coincidentally the 3 boys in our film, but he kind of lives near where the rehabilitation shelter is. Everybody is sheltering in place in Ghana as well, and kind of living the same kind of stay-at-home orders like we are. All 3 of the young men that were in our film are in a boarding school, and like here, the classes have been shut down basically, and the boys were sent back to their families in their villages. So not ideal. We know that that definitely puts kids back at risk when families don't have access to reliable sources of income. We're not too worried about the 3 young men that are in our film, but we do know that this raises the possibility of more trafficking in these areas, especially if the rescue team can't be out there doing their work on the lake, and if the organization also can't be on the ground in the source communities running workshops and educating people about what's actually going on when they send their kids off to the lake.
Thank you for that update. Yeah, thank you for that update, and wishing the best for literally all of us on this call and for the boys, the young men. I have a question quickly for Gina. Gina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I've seen a handful of questions about platforms going through the chat box, and I know that we're addressing them in real time. But one question is, what platforms have you been using to engage with your community? Are there any that are more or less successful? Do you have any recommendations right now for platforms and virtual streaming?
Oh, so specific to the audience that I deal with, which is, adult retirees. I've been finding Zoom to be the easiest compared to WebEx, and having a Zoom paid membership versus a free trial version is the way to go, because you're then not limited by time, and we're allowed to have up to 100 participants per meeting time. So that gives some more leeway in terms of what you're trying to program and how big your community is. Right now I'm getting about 30 folks joining me for the programs I'm doing each week, each program. So I'm looking at about 100, less than 150 folks a week. But for those who deal with, of course, younger communities, you're going to get most likely a much larger participation rate.
Courtney, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can you describe to us, but for the benefit of everybody else who's on, all the attendees on this webinar, the process of making the lesson plan that you made for the rescue list, and how that goes, and who participated and how that came to be?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, and thank you for asking me a question, all the documentaries that POV produces have these additional resources. And specifically for the rescue list, I reached out to a teacher, a 7th grade teacher, Vivette Dukes. She's teaching in Queens. She was teaching in Queens, of course, before everything changed. And she has experience working with POV. She and her students collaboratively worked together to create this lesson plan, meaning that her 7th graders, the experts in learning, and Vivette, the expert in teaching, screened the film together and collaboratively thought about what would be meaningful for young people to engage in as learners. And it was a really incredible process. We had high hopes. Vivette students wrote letters to Peter, Adam, and Teye, and Zach and Alyssa were going to carry those letters back to Ghana. Unfortunately, they had to cancel their travel plans.
We like to think of it as postponed. We're still going. We just don't know when yet.
And so that was a really remarkable experience, I think, for the young people who were the students here in Queens, who were able to watch this documentary and then actually have a connection and write these letters to Peter, Adam, and Teye. And then when the young men in Ghana get the letters, it will also be a collective, meaningful experience. They can see that sharing the story of their experience, there's actual connection rather than connection in the abstract. And yeah, it was really incredible, actually. Is that?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's the lesson plan for the film is an incredible resource, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from teachers as they start using it in their classrooms, or parents as they start using it in their homes, to get some response from how that went and the kind of conversations that it sparked, because the whole thing is based on Socratic dialogue and empowers the students much in the same way that Alyssa and I tried to empower the children in our film and the rescue team in our film to tell their own story. We really appreciate the fact that the lesson plan that you put together empowers the students to kind of think critically about it and create a safe space for discussion.
Thank you. I should not take credit. Vivette and her students receive all the credit. But if I put my teacher hat on for a second and think about how to engage students, and intergenerational students, diverse groups of students in a virtual space using documentaries. I taught high school for many years. I was working at the university. And so thinking about Socratic Seminar also, what better time to ask questions than strive to have a lot of answers than now. And I think that whether you're using Canvas or Blackboard or Google Classroom, there are many different platforms that you can utilize right now in conversation with a documentary film, where you ask your students or your community that you're working with to engage in a series of questions. And so when you think about screening a film or having your community of learners screen a film, and then you create an assignment for engagement that is, I would have my students, they would have to come up with an original question for themselves, something that, whether it was a different kind of text or a documentary film, and then they would have to engage with 2 of their classmates and not offer an answer, but get curious about the question. It gets kind of fun, right? Because you can't say, oh, here's the answer. And we love having answers. But there's one tip, I think, one experience, one lesson, one for all of you struggling right now to figure out how to teach in this virtual space. And I want to echo what Zach and Alyssa offered and just give all of our gratitude to all of you who are navigating this space right now. I don't see any more questions in the chat box, but I do have a couple more here, and I'm going to check the time. Maybe we have time for one more question. Is there a panelist or a participant that has a question you want to throw in the chat box?
And I'll just address something that I've seen come up a couple of times in the chat. The question is it available to use after 4/21? As of right now, I think our streaming window on PBS ends on 4/21, but it will be returning at some point in the future. And we can, we'll be sending out updates from our mailing list, which you probably get the update from POV directly, or if you want to visit therescuelist.com, which is our website, you can sign up for our mailing list. We send out emails very sparsely and sparingly, but we would let you know when it was streaming again on POV, or if for some reason that gets extended.
Right. Thank you for addressing that. And I'll address a question about streaming also. If you go to amdoc.org, you can sign up for our POV playlist, which also sends out a new collection of documentaries, POV documentaries, that stream for 2 weeks at a time. So every 2 weeks, you get a curated playlist of documentaries for free streaming and using in your curriculum or your classroom. Also watch The Rescue List because it's
I'm a subscriber to the playlist. I love it.
Yeah, I know. And you get a handwritten letter from one of our colleagues, Sophie, or sometimes we have filmmakers and artists curate the playlist as well. And they're all organized around a theme. But all of the films that you'll get in your inbox if you subscribe to the playlist stream for 2 weeks after it's a Monday. They're always sent on Mondays. So you'll have 2 weeks worth of free resources to use. And just like all the other films, these documentaries will have supplementary educational resources to help guide you in your teaching. I'm going to go ahead and begin wrapping it up. Gina, is there anything that you'd like to offer before we start closing out?
Just, POV is, as I reiterate from my earlier comments, POV is an excellent tool, especially right now in conjunction with library programming and using your online streaming services such as Canopy. There are a lot of older POV films available on Canopy that I see some questions regarding what's available for streaming through POV. Since presently the DVD lending library isn't operating due to the pandemic. Check out, for those of you at libraries, check out Canopy and your licensing agreements for streaming. I found easily like a dozen POV films on there, to fill up some of your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Courtney, do you want to just briefly talk about the rest of the team that's behind the scenes here who helped put all of this together?
Absolutely.
Not to put you on the spot, but I kind of am.
Fine. I mean, I think that one thing that we should do is address, of course, this is a film that was made in Ghana, and this panel has been made up of a collection of white people, and we just want to address very explicitly the lack of diversity on the panel. And it wasn't our intention to have the faces that have been shown be majority white panel when we're taking up issues of people of color on a global scale. And just for recognition and to acknowledge, we would like to do that here.
And also that our team is more diverse than what is represented on these 2 video cameras right now.
Yes, of course. It's just the representation of our faces right here on this screen. We'd also like to offer our deepest gratitude and admirations, as we have already, for teachers out there. And thank all of you for showing up and hanging in there tonight. I want to thank our panelists again. I want to thank Assad, Akila, Rachel, Chrissy, Jahida, everybody on the POV Engage team that made this possible. And thank you all for your questions. Please know that we're here. POV Community Network, there's a link in the chat box. There will be a DVD lending library again. We have to remain hopeful that there will be something after this moment. In the meantime, I hope you're all safe. I hope you're all well, and I hope you're all taking good rest for yourselves. Stay tuned for our season 33, which we will announce soon. Lots of wonderful documentaries coming at you live.
We're excited for that.
Yes.
And thank you, Courtney and Akila and Gina, for being on the panel with us and for having us here with you guys today. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Send us your
Thank you all for
emails if you have
joining
any
us.
questions. Again, we'll send out a follow-up email, hopefully sometime this week or next, with a copy of the webinar. But yeah, send us any questions you have, events@pov.org. But yes, be well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.